I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my experience as a drug addict and an alcoholic. I'm primarily an alcoholic. I was raised in a family where my father was a drug addict and drug dealer, not so much an alcoholic, and then my mom was a sherry drinker, a little bit on the heavy side, you could say, an alcoholic maintenance drinker. And they were different than my real family. I was adopted, so that's another thing. But I'm going to talk about my disease a little bit. And I've had it since I was 5. I mean, my first drink was alcoholically when I was 5. I just got hammered, and ever since then I've gotten hammered. I've never been able to socially drink, and it's genetic. I met my blood family later on in life, and they're all alcoholics genetically, even though they were raised in different environments. Some of it's part of the race that I am, is one of my handicaps of why I'm an alcoholic. But you know, the odds of an alcoholic or a drug addict staying sober for life is not very good. You know, these treatment centers and all these different places, and even AA will say, you know, the odds of an alcoholic getting and staying sober for life are good. And from being in the business and being around it and being one myself, I'll say out of 50 people I know that are alcoholics, we'll just stick with the alcoholism, one, maybe 2 have died sober. That means they lived, they quit drinking, and they spent the rest of their life and they died sober, and they quit drinking for the remainder of their life. But the odds are really stacked against you. I mean, from my personal experience, you know, I finally had to accept that I was never going to be able. The longest I ever had was 6 years, you know, and I can feel guilty and say I didn't do this and I did that wrong or whatever, you know, and blame myself or whatever. But, you know, that's the longest I've ever been able to get, was 6 years back to back. And then I had 3 years and a year and a half and 2 years. And we can blame, you know, not seeing enough of psychiatrists, or seeing too many, or not working the steps, or not going to enough of meetings, or whatever, you know. I can come up with 100 different excuses why I relapse, you know, and I can feel guilty and all of that. And I can tell you I quit going to meetings, but I relapsed even when I was going to meetings daily. And I know people that were sponsoring like 10 people. They had 10 years, they were going to meetings, and then they relapsed. I mean, it's part of the disease that you have to accept. And the odds are stacked against you. I mean, once you're a fully blown alcoholic or drug addict, the odds of ever living a full rest of your life sober really aren't that good. I hate to disappoint you, but from being around it and as many years as I have, I mean, I've been around it since I was 5. I started recovery when I was 19. The odds just aren't really good. I mean, people die, they disappear, whatever. And so the odds of recovery aren't that great, but what I'm getting at is what I've done right is, you know, as soon as I can, I pick myself back up and I give it another try. I try getting sober again. You know, that's the one thing I've done right, and that's the one thing I've seen kill other people, is their pride. Because they relapse or they go back to drinking or drugs or whatever, their pride is too big, or they don't want to admit to their friends or whatever, you know, and give it another try, and eventually it kills them. Or I've known people that have like 10 years. I've known a bunch of people have had between 10, 12, 15 years, and they just blow their brains out. They just can't deal with life sober. And rather than relapsing and knowing the horror that that's going to cause them, they just end it all. They commit suicide. You know, they take an overdose of sleeping pills or whatever. These are real stories, you know. And, you know, all I can say is you got to just pick yourself up by your bootstraps and give it another try, you know, and accept the fact that you might not stay sober the rest of your life. I mean, that's part of the deal. It's not a perfect world, you know, but the worst mistake I see people make is they hang it up. You know, you got to keep trying even after you relapse. Even if people disrespect you and they don't want to talk to you and they disown you and they don't want anything to do with you and you've lost everything you've had and you basically think that you have nothing left to live for, you know, you just can't give up. You got to keep giving it a try and realize that that is just part of the deal. You know, that's just the way it is. You know, it's like a lot of people that go through cancer treatment. You know, they go through a year of chemotherapy or 6 months or whatever, and the cancer goes away. It's gone. But, you know, like with cancer, eventually it returns. You know, and sometimes the chemo was so horrible in the first place, they don't want to do it again. Just like sobering up again. It's horrible, you know. You got to go through all this stuff, and they don't want to do it again, so they'd rather die than go through the chemotherapy again. But alcoholism's kind of the same way as cancer is it can return, you know. And the best thing you can do is just pick yourself up and try to get your act together again, you know, and cut your losses and do what you got to do to give it another try. And that's what I have done. You know, I've done a lot of things wrong. I've relapsed. You know, I've made a lot of mistakes in my life, in my sobriety. I haven't always worked the program correctly or whatever. But the main mistake I see that kills the most people is after the relapse, they just give up rather than giving it another try. They just kind of hang it up and they lose hope if they don't die instantly from it. I mean, I know some people that have just died instantly. You know, they get 8, 10, 12, 15 years. I mean, I've known a lot of people, and they have a relapse and they have like 3 bad days and that's it. You know, they're done. And the thing with alcoholism in particular, since I'm an alcoholic, I'll focus mostly on that, is the disease gets worse. Even when you put down the drink, like for example, I quit for 5 years one time, went through a really bad trauma with my mom having cancer and having to bury her, whatever excuse I want to use. I went through a bad trauma. And I thought that I could, you know, handle the booze again and everything. And it just tore me to pieces really quick. So that's all you can do is pick yourself up, you know, even if you have some time or whatever. And I had to go through horrible getting sober again and all that stuff. So I guess the main lesson here, you're sick of looking at me, aren't you? You can tell the truth. You're sick of looking at me. You're probably sick of listening to me by now. But anyways, the main point of this talk or this message is as an alcoholic and a drug addict, you are going to relapse, probably. And from all the alcoholics and drug addicts I've known, they usually relapse, and the odds aren't that great of you staying sober for life. But if you listen to this video, and when you do relapse, you realize part of the process, get back up on your feet and get going again and give it another try. And if it happens again, you get back up on your feet. You know, you don't quit. You keep going and you keep trying, and that's what I've done, you know. People look down at you, so what? You know, you go back to your support group, fuck them, you're doing it for yourself.